Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We might just give it one more minute or so just to let a few more people join. Feel free to jump in the chat and introduce yourself. And we'll kick off shortly. Okay, I can see plenty more people streaming in, but I think just in the interest of time, we might get started. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining the webinar today. This is actually our third webinar where we spend time really spotlighting some new, emerging, exciting technologies that we think are worth sharing, or might be market trends as well. Really exciting topic today, focusing on agentic marketing, which is definitely a hot topic out there at the moment. And really excited to have the Hightouch guys on the call today. So we'll dive in. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'll be facilitating today. My name's Ben. I head up strategy at Inlight. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into things. Your mics are muted. We definitely like lots of engagement though, so please drop any questions into the chat. We'll do our best to get to those throughout the session. We've got some dedicated time at the end to focus on those as well. The session is being recorded. We always do a bit of a wrap up for these webinars, so we'll make sure we send that out after the webinar and get the link, so you've got that in your hands. And we also will be running a poll throughout the session as well. It'll actually pop up in the chat on the right there, so when you see that pop up, make sure you participate in the poll. It's always a good vibe check to get a sense of where everyone's at in terms of the topic of agentic marketing. For anyone that doesn't know Inlight, a really brief introduction. So we're a digital agency, we're independent, based in Melbourne, and really the reason we exist is to help our clients get more return in terms of their digital and technology investments. We do that in a lot of different ways. We've got a big focus on strategy and really helping to shape up roadmaps, and a lot of that does include the data and the MarTech piece that we'll be talking about today. We're also really strong on the delivery side, so when it comes to UX design and development and really bringing digital products and experiences to life, that's a big focus for us as well. And we have a pretty deliberate focus on making sure whatever we deliver returns that value for you as well. Now, one of the things that's really important to us here at Inlight, and has been important to us for a long time, is this idea of composability. We often talk about this a lot. We've put a lot of content out there on the topic. Put simply, it's really choosing best of breed technologies or capabilities that typically do something really well. They're usually pretty open, pretty flexible, API first. They're really easy to connect into your ecosystem and build on top of as well. And that's a little bit in contrast to what might be more of a monolithic type platform or an all-in-one platform that tries to do absolutely everything for you. You can see on the screen there's some examples of different platforms that we like to work with. By no means is this an exhaustive list, just some of the platforms we like to work with across different areas. And you'll see there under data, we've got CDP and activation highlighted. And I think that's really where the Hightouch guys have come from in terms of coining that composable CDP, although definitely extending into more capability areas at the moment and doing some really cool stuff in terms of agentic marketing. So excited to show you some of that today. With that, I'm going to introduce our speakers. So we've got Aidan on the call, who heads up the ANZ region at Hightouch. We've got Billy. Billy will be doing a really awesome demo of the Hightouch platform. We've got our own Anthony as well, who heads up our MarTech data and analytics practice. And with that, I'll hand over to you, Anthony.
Great, thanks Ben, and thanks everyone for joining today. I thought as a bit of a precursor to a really fantastic demo that we're going to see from Hightouch, to touch on a few points where I've sort of seen organizations not get the best value out of some of their stacks and agentic workflows. And from a data perspective, what we're seeing is that activation fails because that data layer is just not strong enough. It's not giving the agent enough context to activate from. And I've tried to portray a professional depiction of that on the right. And just to suggest that this is not a new problem, right? Data scientists have been cleaning data for their machine learning models for a long time now. And it's a challenge that's just compounding and becoming exponential as we move into the world of agentic AI and marketing. Siloed data and fragmented stacks, data that sits in your kind of monolithic platform. It's a copy of one system to another, makes it really, really hard for the agent to read, as well as multiple disconnected identities across those platforms. There's a great quote from Matthew Niederberger from MarTech Therapy, who says, "You cannot measure what you cannot join." And I think that's just a great line to suggest that if person A is the same as person B, the agent's not going to have any idea how to market to two people that are actually the same. And getting your data foundations right and consistent is super important to get the best value and breadth in terms of activation from your platforms. And the research across the board for a number of years now has been citing a lot of these issues for a long time now. So McKinsey did a bit of research very recently to say that 8 out of 10 companies are citing data limitations in terms of the roadblock to scaling their agentic AI frameworks. Gartner, in their 2013 marketing survey, said that 67% of companies actually have a CDP, but only 17% report high utilization. That might mean no integrations or very little. Audience creation is still done manually, and that manual workflow is still created inside of the CDP by the marketer. And then finally, Salesforce State of Marketing recently stated that only 25% of marketers actually feel satisfied with their ability to use data for personalization. And I speak to a lot of clients and a lot of people in the industry who are still doing kind of some of the simple things like first name, last name, and maybe some of that first party data personalization. And I think we can definitely have an opportunity with some of the foundations that you set to bring that up to a level where you're presenting the right message at the right time to the right person through those foundations. Ben recently in his previous slides mentioned this concept of composability, and from a marketing stack perspective, we are seeing that composability is the now. That modular warehouse native architecture is conversations that we're having as we speak with people, and marketers are fully on board with having this concept of the all composable CDP, plug and play with all of your best of breed tools. And from a CDP perspective, that shift from an all-in-one sort of closed system where your data collection and your audience orchestration, management and activation all sits in that one sort of monolithic platform, to a more composable, modular and scalable, sitting on top of your source of truth, which is your data warehouse, is feeding AI decisioning significantly better and more flexible. And it's creating less restrictions on what the marketer can actually do in terms of reach from a channel and audience perspective. And lastly, this is not an exhaustive list of what I would consider the keys to unlocking value, but just a few things to keep in mind when you're thinking about going on the journey of implementing a agentic CDP, such as Hightouch, that sits on your warehouse, is defining your success signals, and that could be across transactional and non-transactional events through your digital journeys. Aligning on your identifiers, I mentioned this before. It's difficult for an agent to market to two people who are actually the same. align on these really early, and have them proliferate across your data sets is super important. Building your context layers. You're probably going to hear context a lot more in this presentation, and I think it's really important to get a lot of those layers agent readable, give the agent full coverage, and decide on what the right time to refresh data is. So whether that be you need something in real time or daily, depending on your goals, will depend on when you want to set those cadences. And last but not least, we're seeing a shift in terms of what marketing teams actually do. Moving away from the manual one-time send, you build the content, you set the scheduling rules, to hitting the launch button, and with the agentic workflow moving more towards them becoming the orchestrator, setting those guardrails and outcomes and goals that you want the marketing to achieve. And if you're out there and you're looking at all your data sets and you're thinking, I could get a lot more value out of this, I love talking about this stuff. Feel free to reach out to myself or someone in the Inlight team, and we'd love to help out. Ben, I'll probably throw to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. That was super valuable. We're actually going to do a quick poll now. So I'm going to kick that off in the chat. So fire that up now. So everyone on the call, might take a few seconds to pop up there. Okay. So interesting. So where are you at with AI in your marketing campaigns? Interesting results here. It looks like we've got a little bit of a spread. 14% no AI in play. 50% experimenting, nothing live, and then 33% live in a few workflows, which is really good to see. I think we expected that, and then only a small amount driving decisions at scale, which is awesome, because that's really the focus of where we're going to go from here. So thanks everyone for contributing to that. Just going to close that down. I'm going to hand over to you, Aidan.
Great, thanks Ben. Hi everyone, Aidan Lynch here. I'm the country manager at Hightouch. I'm excited to join the Inlight team here today. I'll be joined by Billy, who's really the star of the show. He's on our solution engineering team. He's going to take us through a short demo. But just for some context setting before we get started, I've been in this space for about 20 years. In that time, we've had this explosion of different SaaS applications. As I spoke to different marketing and digital teams over those years, one of the common pain points was around integration. I've got all these data silos. How do I start to integrate these? And so that's why we saw this shift over the last 5-6 years, where the intelligence was shifting towards data warehouses. So this rise of Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, organizations wanted to maintain ownership of that data, in a single source of truth, to have it, governed. And that's become really important now as we enter into this agentic age. When you have the ability to centralize all of that data, it's really important for that to all be together for the agents to start interacting with that for the whole of enterprise. So when we're not the only ones to be observing these trends in the market. If you're familiar with Scott Brinker, he's been tracking this space for the last 15 years. So this report from Scott, he's known as the godfather of MarTech. It lays out his vision for the future, where he talks about this composable marketing architecture built around a unified layer. And really everything starts with your data. Then you have different layers around it. So the semantic layer, which really just means like a translation of what's in the data side of things into a marketer or a business-friendly context. And then having context and decisioning, and then finally your different apps and agents around it. And his prediction is that this is now becoming the default. So composable architecture in this way is going to become the default for lots of organizations. And so when we were talking about context a little bit earlier, let's unpack that a bit. So what is context? Well, it comes from lots of different places. It can come from your warehouse. So it can be data with your customer and business context. It could be strategic context. So understanding priorities of the organization, brand guidelines and rules. It can come from your channels. So owned channels of execution or paid channels such as Meta or Google Ads, and how you're performing within those channels. But then there's also, that wider context of maybe the industry that you're in, or your competitors, or web presence. So lots of different areas where context can come in. And at Hightouch, we believe not just in your CDP being composable, but also context being composable as well. So there's really kind of three ideas that we think about. So one, it needs to be fluid. So, the context should move where it creates value. Should be open. So, Hightouch isn't going to lock you in with the context. You should be, have an openness to it, be able to shift that context around, and it should be compounding as well. So as the system is learning over time and you're adding in there, the context should be this continually evolving thing. So how does that all then start to stack up with a platform like Hightouch? So akin to Brinker's Onion, this is exactly how we've organized the Hightouch platform. So a few months back, we launched our Agentic marketing platform, which has the data really at the core, and then combine that in with this brand knowledge. Billy's going to talk you through how we actually bring that context together with a wrapper on top of that, of this intelligence layer. You're going to see some aspects of that in our demonstration today, and then bringing in the content layer through to journey orchestration. And then finally this exciting last piece that we've now launched, all the way through to native activation. So that last mile of sending the email, sending the SMS, and delivering the communication down to your customer. So that's the tech around agentic marketing. But what about people and process in this paradigm shift? Well, marketers are always making decisions, and they rarely get enough insights to make those decisions effectively. There's just really not enough time. So the result is that questions go unanswered, strategic questions get postponed, and performance ultimately suffers. So, how often do you have all the insights you need to make decisions? And this is the problem that the Agentic CDP is really designed to solve. So the Agentic CDP changes how marketers make decisions in two ways. So the first is that marketers can bring any marketing question or objective to the agents. You might have an objective like re-engaging lapsed customers, or have an open-ended question like why churn increased. So the agent investigates the data in the same way an experienced analyst would, connecting the dots across the business, and then recommends what to do. Instead of just answering questions, it helps marketers figure out what they ought to be doing. The second is that increasingly marketers won't even need to ask. Always-on agents are going to continually analyze the customer campaign, the business data in the background, and then start to surface opportunities and recommendations as they emerge. This has been this nirvana state that we've all been desiring for decades now. The result is that Agentic CDP becomes the starting point for every marketing decision. So sometimes marketers will start with a question, sometimes the opportunity will come to them. But either way, you're going to spend less time searching for answers and more time evaluating the opportunities and then making decisions as well. So think of agents as co-pilots. So they're going to support anywhere along the marketing workflow. They're trained to think like marketers and expert analysts, and they can actually take the action just like any member of your team. I'm going to walk through three quick examples. So the first two are interactive on-demand examples, and then the third speaks to more proactive insights that Hightouch suggests for you. So imagine you're planning a product launch, and instead of manually analyzing dozens of questions to build your strategy, you simply tell the agent your objective. The agent then investigates the business on your behalf, looks at historical campaign performance, identifies the audiences most likely to respond, reviews what's worked in the past, and then pulls together a complete campaign strategy. The marketer is still exercising their judgment, but it dramatically reduces the amount of manual investigation that has to happen before a decision can be made. In this next scenario, we've got a simplified journey optimization example. So imagine you've got a generic win-back journey that sends the same message to every customer. Instead of manually analyzing performance to figure out what to change, the agent can look for opportunities to improve it. So in this example, it's recommending 3 message variations based on how different segments respond. And then the really exciting part is that soon marketers won't even have to initiate the conversation. Agents will continually analyze what's happening across the business and proactively surface both insights and suggestions related to your goals. So rather than waiting for someone to ask the right question, they identify the opportunities as they emerge and bring them to the marketer with suggested next steps, helping you to identify opportunities that you could have missed. We think this represents the next evolution of the CDP. So you've got traditional CDPs that will help marketers activate customer data, and then the Agentic CDP helps marketers decide how to use it. So this is not just theory. We've been out in the wild helping organizations to enable agentic workflows. And this is allowing them to compress weeks of work into days to produce new advertising campaigns, such as this really fun Times Square takeover that we did just about 6-7 weeks ago. We ran this with customers like Air New Zealand and TripAdvisor, where processes that would normally take weeks were compressed into just a couple of days. So to see this in action, I'm going to hand over to Billy, and he'll take us through a short demonstration of our agentic marketing platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Aidan. Great intro.
I might jump in there. Sorry, really quickly, Aidan. That was good. Thank you. I just had one question that'd be good to focus on. I think when I think about the shift from more traditional campaigns, which are quite planned, quite hands-on, and they've got pretty deliberate governance and approval steps in those, and shifting to more this agentic model, which is maybe a little bit less planned. What do you, like, from a governance and control point of view, what do you think are the most important things that businesses should be thinking about to get that piece right in terms of the shift, and just making sure you've got those governance controls and layers there?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that comes from a number of different angles. Could be legal, could be understanding brand guidelines, and so all of that gets baked down into the context hub with inside Hightouch. But we also then have approvals in there, so we'll do proactive alerting as you're going through these agentic workflows to see if something is non-compliant straight up. So even before it gets to legal, like, you're making the tweaks and getting something to a point where maybe it's like now 90 to 95% good, and maybe it's just the last couple of checks and balances need to be done by strategists or legal compliance people.
Got it. Okay. And then just one more question. And then in terms of like teams and team structure, when you see your customers shifting the model, are you noticing a change in team compositions and the way teams are structured, or teams are staying the same and adjusting? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely becoming a bit more cross-functional. So we're seeing this trend to having some foundational pillars within the business, and then coming together as pods. We can create this flywheel and iterate through these processes a lot quicker in the past. So I think that agents are definitely going to start to reshape the marketing department pretty significantly.
Got it. Okay, and we've just had one more question come through on the chat from Divya. How do you manage different teams who may be creating their own customer definitions in the composable ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we do that in a couple of ways. So it's down all the way into a schema layer that we have, where that's defined within the data set that you have. And then it can also be set up within context. So you can actually provide, and this is something Billy's going to show, we can have context around customer definition and how we create audiences within Hightouch as well. So there's several layers in there.
Awesome. All right. Very good. Thank you. I'll just hand over to you now, Billy. Go for it.
Thanks for the intro, guys, and looking forward to bringing this a little bit to life in the platform now. What we're going to look at today is a day in the life of a marketer at a brand like Nike. And we're going to have one goal in mind here, which is to drive repeat purchases. And so normally going from insight to action takes weeks and many different tools, but today I want to show you how we can do this in one connected flow. So there's 6 steps here. Start with using an agent. We're going to find the opportunity hiding in the data. We'll look at the context, as Aidan has just been talking about, that makes the agent trustworthy. And from there, we'll build the audience, create the journey, pair it with some creative, and then activate that across our paid and owned channels. Finally, we'll wrap it up and we'll close the loop with some analytics to prove the value of the campaign that we've just delivered. So I really want you to observe the speed from insight to action as we go throughout this, and watch that every step feeds into the next one. So we're going to start today with where the marketer's day starts, a problem. So we're in the Hightouch platform in data agents here, and already I can see some proactive recommendations on questions to ask the agent. But I've got a specific question I want answered to start off with, and that is that we've got a hypothesis that repeat purchases are slipping, but we're not sure why. And so the agent has already validated my concerns. It's seen here that we've got our repeat purchase rate dropping off, and it's identified the culprit. And that's football kit first-time buyers have got a materially lower repurchase rate than the rest of our customer base. And it's even factored in seasonality to identify the reason behind this, which is that the World Cup ran recently and everyone's gone off and bought their team's kit and then not come back. And ultimately here, this has presented a huge opportunity for us to convert these people into returning customers, and it's even sized up the opportunity for us. And so as we move through the response here, I can get a better understanding of the problem. So what's the repeat purchase trend line, as well as the opportunity that lies ahead of us. So if we are able to convert these people to repeat purchases, we're going to get $700,000 uplift here. But finally, what it's given us is some next steps to action. So I can see now it's recommending to build the audience, and we're going to see how to do that in a little bit. But then taking the customers on a nurture journey to be able to convert them across different channels within our stack. So what we've just seen there is we've found the leak in a matter of minutes. But before we want to show you how we act on that, I want to explain why you can trust the output from the agent. So I'm jumping into the context hub. And as we're all aware now, an agent is only as good as the context behind it. And this is what stops a raw LLM just guessing at your data. So in here, I can see that I've got business and brand context. We have our warehouse data model, creative assets, brand guidelines, tone of voice, how you define the metrics that matter. In best practices here, I've got some recommendations, but this can also be customized as to exactly how our emails need to be formatted. And I can even set guardrails for some of our creative elements. So think for creative, am I able to riff off my existing asset library, or do I have to use the assets as they exist? This is something that both creative and legal teams are really going to care about. Jumping into styles here, in any big enterprise, there isn't one set of brand rules. So a clearance campaign is going to look nothing like a premium launch, and footwear follows totally different guidelines to apparel. So I need to define separate styles, so one per campaign type or product line, and the agent can then apply those automatically. And all of this connects into our existing systems that we already run. From a paid media perspective, I can pull in the creative that we're running, as well as how that creative is performing. And I can do the same thing across our own channels for email, SMS, and push. Finally, it plugs into your existing asset library, your digital asset management platform. So we manage assets where they already live. And it also connects into your hosted product feeds. So no manual uploads, no exporting catalogs. So every ad and email is built on current and real inventory. And so that grounding difference is the difference between a generic model and one that knows your business. And so what I want to show you now is, with that trust, how we can take action on that insight. So we know who to target, which is first-time football buyers who haven't come back. But let's now see how we can build that audience without having to wait on a data ticket to the data team. So jumping back into the thread that we kicked off, I've now asked the agent to build that audience for me. So it's gone ahead and had a first pass here, as we can see. And I'm going to jump in and be the human in the loop. I'm just going to make this full screen. But ultimately, using the building blocks from the warehouse, I'm able to splice and dice on using customer attributes, historical orders, behavioral events with our customers, and even engagement channel interactions as well. If I want to get really targeted, I can start factoring in machine learning. And this can be built from your own data science team, or it can be done out of the box with Hightouch, but it's all built on your warehouse data. So we can do things like understand the likelihood to purchase or to churn. We can understand a lookalike of our highest value customers and use this for prospecting across our paid channels. And when we're starting to think about creative personalization, we can think about the next best product to show to our customers by understanding, again, that through machine learning recommendations. I can even see the size of the audience as I get sharper and sharper and how it gets smaller and more targeted. And again, without having to go back to the data team to get analytics, I can directly ask the agent for some insights around the audience. And so here it's showing me the clubs that this audience support, what national teams do they support, and how likely are they to actually make a second purchase. So naturally, what I need to do now is activate this audience consistently across all of my channels. So I've already got a few syncs running. And when I say sync, I mean sending the data downstream to our connected platforms. I'm going to add one more here to send this audience list down to Google. So that's now sending and running on a configurable schedule of your choosing. And that'll be just kept up to date without you having to upload and download CSVs moving forward. But once I start running these programs, I want to understand incrementality. So I can actually set up experiments here where we hold out marketing altogether, so they receive nothing, as well as sending to paid and owned only. And so ultimately here I can understand, is my marketing driving any uplift at all? And is paid driving incremental on top of that? And we're able to jump into the results tab here once the experiment's finished running and see if those results were actually statistically significant before we start readjusting our channel mix. Beautiful. So what we've seen there is a governed audience live across every channel, going from insight to action in a matter of minutes, and data never leaving the warehouse. So next, we want to go to the next level, which is turning this into a multi-channel journey and applying the creative to match that. So I'm going to jump back into that same thread. And with the context we've already given it, I've asked the agent to build a journey. And so it's split the audience by propensity. High propensity customers, we're going to convert on cheaper owned channels, and lower propensity, we're going to back with paid media as well as SMS because we think this is worth the spend. But before I even spend a cent, what I want to understand is how this would have performed if we had to run this data historically. And so the agent's gone and used 6 months of historical data here and shown us how customers would have traversed through this journey and converted. And to call out here, again, with Hightouch being composable, I can plug this to any platform in my existing stack. So for email, it's Iterable, Braze, Salesforce, Adobe, and even all of our paid media platform, Meta, Google, the Trade Desk, whatever you advertise on today. Great. So we've got our journey built out. The next is we want to apply the creative to each of the nodes in this journey. This is where we're jumping into Lifecycle Studio. Okay. Now, what sorry, let me jump here. And so what the agent has done is off that, I can jump into the thread and I can say, create me a campaign. So again, looking at all that context from the journey, it's going to create me a brief to be able to deliver that creative. So it's looked at the target audiences, it's looked at the key messages and the dynamic personalization that we want to deliver. So things like, what are the fields to personalize? What's the conditional logic if we don't have data on those fields? And what's the campaign structure? So for each of those nodes, what kind of messaging are we going to deliver across each channel? I can interact with the agent, I can manually edit this, but once I'm happy with it, I'm then able to generate variants across each of those nodes and channels. And so these have been created by the agent. And now I'm going to jump into one that I have previously been looking at. And already what I can see here is the agent has pulled in all of that personalization context from the warehouse without me having to write any liquid logic at all. And it's built against Nike's own templates, so it's on brand out of the gate. And we can even see here some of the recommendations we've pulled in from those machine learning models. But the biggest problem here from customers when we're thinking about creating new creative is we have to go through the process of getting it approved by brand and legal. And this can be back and forth over many weeks. And what the agent can actually do is behind the scenes, I've built in a legal and a creative agent with our guidelines from internally. And it has actually provided me recommendations for what the email needs to have change in order to apply to those. And we can fix these automatically. But once we're happy, I can now send this off to both our legal and creative teams with some notes for them to then approve that last mile before we take it live and push it to our downstream tools. Right. The final bit is Hightouch, again, being composable. We don't want this stuck within the platform. You might be working with another tool that delivers your email SMS, and these emails are now portable downstream. So I can export directly to my existing email provider, and this will then be transformed into the language that is being used downstream into that tool automatically. Great. So what we then know is that I can launch the Journey and Creative are built now. They're reviewed, they're on brand, and we can launch them into each of our channels. So the next step now is how we're going to launch these across paid as well. Beautiful. So looking now at Ad Studio, and what we know is that paid platforms are starving for creative. The algorithm always wants more variance, and that's the problem that Ad Studio solves. So continuing on from the recent World Cup mania, let's say in the very unlikely moment that England were to win the World Cup, and we wanted to get the ad out that day, through the normal creative process, that would be near on impossible. What we're going to show you is how we can do that here in minutes. So I can drop a bit of a brief in here. I could have downloaded that from my previous session, but basically said, create me an England have just won campaign, which is going to help us drive repeat purchases. That's going to then generate a whole bunch of concepts and variants for us. And the agent is not just guessing out of the blue. As we talked about before, we integrate into your existing paid platforms. So we can see here all of our existing ads that are running, how they're performing, as well as what our competitors are doing as well. Now, once I've got those initial concepts, I now want to start editing and finalizing those ads. And what we hear is when people are trying to do this basically out of an LLM is you keep getting a flat file and you have to tweak and go back and forward with the prompting with an agent. And this just makes it really hard to get to a final product. In Hightouch, we've been able to decompose this down into elements for you. So I can come in here and edit exactly what I need to edit before I want to take it live. We can also save a huge amount of time in generating the variants across each of the channels that we want to launch this on. So it becomes one click of a button rather than shipping this off for a lot of work for an agency or an internal team. They can now move a lot faster and do a lot more volume and scale. And finally, we can push these directly into the ad platforms so they're ready to go and to pair with that audience that we pushed down previously. Finally, we want to understand how those ads are performing. So we've got a bit of a dashboard here to understand what we're spending across each of our channels, which of our ads are fatiguing, and we need to focus our attention on generating more creative for them. What's working well, and maybe we should generate some more variants there too. What's happening in market? What are our competitors doing? What are the industry signals? And then it's going to generate ideas for us to take these new ad concepts to market. Beautiful. So we've just now seen how we can close the loop on creative fatigue. And now what we want to understand is how we can actually measure the performance of this campaign end to end for driving repeat purchases. So I'm going to jump back into the agent thread that we've been working on throughout this process. And now I've gone and clicked here again, and I've asked it to create a report for me. And so I can see here the output, and this is going to be delivered to Slack, to an inbox on a configurable schedule. But ultimately it said, this campaign has helped us increase the repeat purchase rate by almost 2x versus the holdout group we saw in our experiments there. We've seen 62 incremental orders. And these have been like profitable in terms of a margin perspective. And ultimately, we're checking the health of the journey. No one's dropping out or failing unexpectedly. So everyone's passing through the journey as we expect. There's a whole lot more insight here as to how it's performing. But one insight we can see is that medium tier that we're actually spending the paid media on, they have actually converted at the best rate. And we've been still able to convert our highest propensity customers on our own channels as well. And to wrap it up, it's given me some recommendations on how I can actually improve the journey. So let's scale out that medium tier budget more. Let's maybe put in a dash of spend on our high propensity channels. And we can see here that our biggest drop-off point in the funnel is between sending the email and engaging with it. So maybe that's a signal that we need to improve the creative and the personalization in the email, which we can obviously go off and do with Ad Studio now. Beautiful. So that's the whole arc. We've gone from insight to action in a matter of minutes. We've found the opportunity, built the audience, created the journey, paired that with the creative, scaled it out to paid media. We've measured the impact, and we've got a loop that will keep refreshing over time. So what normally takes the marketing team weeks across multiple tools is happening in one connected flow in a single session. And that's the new way of marketing with Hightouch. So that's it from me, Ben. I'll hand it back to you.
That was awesome. Thank you, Billy. You covered a lot in a short amount of time. I'm sure there's a lot more under the hood, and it's definitely a big shift from what I can see from a more traditional way of marketing. We've definitely got some questions here, which I want to get to. I had one question, like for you guys, obviously data hygiene and having that warehouse in order is critical to the success of the platform, and particularly agentic marketing as well. How do you find that when you onboard customers, they've already got a data warehouse? Is there usually a big project to assess like the state of the warehouse and that data hygiene to get it right? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the warehouse is like we start generally with like one high priority use case, and you don't have to upload all of the data into the warehouse at once. Just start with what you need and then expand from there. So you can we see customers getting value really, really quickly by approaching it that way.
Got it. Okay, so start with the use case and work backwards towards the data.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. What else did we have here? This is a good question, just around context hub and context, which is obviously also critical to success. The question was, how does it work at scale and between different teams? Could it get to thousands of lines of facts that need to be maintained? So I guess the question is, once you build all that context across multiple teams, how do you best maintain it?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a few elements here. We have the concept of like different spaces for different brands, and so that will remain kind of like segmented. And as I said, we can like set the guardrails there for individual brands at the same level. And finally, there's actually a really cool feature in there where an agent reviews all of the context you put in and looks for redundancy, for overlap, for contradictions, and then actually provides recommendations on how to fix up that context so we don't have those gaps.
There's also, evolving context as well, because you've got the connection with your data warehouse. So context is continually evolving with the access through the schema layer that we have. There's the connection into your DAM. Again, context continually evolving as your assets are being updated. And then your connections into platforms like your paid media. So, or your execution channels. So bringing back response data, like how did the campaigns perform? Who opened my emails? So there's like many different layers, and I think it's always continually evolving and growing.
Yeah, for sure. So all of that dynamic context. I mean, I think any static context, and this is probably just not your platform, right? Like if you're using AI, thinking about ongoing processes to review that context and making sure it's up to date, and that hygiene piece is really critical to start thinking about those processes. Another question here. Obviously, Nike is a big business. Have you a view on the scale a business needs to be in order to really benefit from this type of setup?
Yeah, it's really a mid-market and up through to enterprise. Yeah, I guess just with, inherently starting out with a cloud data warehouse, because we're warehouse native, you need to be starting from there. It tends to be less of an SMB type tool, because like you do need to have like a little bit of data engineering skills in-house, and that tends to be like mid-market organizations and above.
Got it. Cool. Thanks, Aidan. I'm just conscious of time. There's a couple of questions there. We might leave those ones, and I'll make a commitment to come back as part of a follow-up and cover off those questions for you. Super cool demo. Thank you, Billy and Aidan. That was great. Pretty eye-opening, and Anthony, of course, as well. Just to wrap up, if you've seen anything that you found really interesting, insightful today, and you want to speak more, the door is open. We do have a data foundations diagnostic scorecard that we've developed. So if you do want a light touch process just to see where you're at from a data point of view and how that might enable you to leverage this type of technology, please reach out and we can run that process pretty quickly for you and get a scorecard back. Likewise, if you want to explore Hightouch more or have a conversation with Aidan, just let me know and we can facilitate that introduction. But that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, guys.